In 1993, a NASA spacecraft went silent 3 days before it was due to photograph the most controversial region on Mars, and the data it collected on the way in was never recovered. In 2024, Perseverance found a rock with patterns that NASA's own scientists called a potential biosignature, and then went very quiet about the results. And on Mars' largest moon, the second man to ever walk on the moon looked at a photograph and publicly said it may have been, quote, placed there by an intelligent design. These are 10 things NASA found on Mars that were never officially explained, and in some cases were never officially mentioned at all. Earlier this year, photographs from an enormous ridge formation on the slopes of Mount Sharp, structures that look like a spider web or cracked eggshell spread across the terrain. They're called boxwork structures. On Earth, boxwork only forms inside caves, carved by underground water dissolving rock from below. Finding them exposed on the open Martian surface raises an obvious question. What kind of underground water activity created them, and how deep does it go? NASA described the find as geologically significant, but the full explanation hasn't arrived yet. Here's one that didn't get nearly the attention it deserved. While Curiosity was tracking methane, it was also monitoring oxygen in Gale Crater and found that oxygen levels rise by up to 30% in spring and summer, then fall back in winter. That's seasonal cycle. No known geological process on Mars can produce it. On Earth, that specific pattern, oxygen increasing with warmth, is photosynthesis. Nobody at NASA is claiming photosynthesis is happening on Mars, but the alternative explanation is still officially unknown. Curiosity found something that planetary scientists called one of the most significant geological discoveries on Mars ever. Thick layers of carbonate rock, mineral deposits left by ancient standing lakes. This solves a long-standing mystery. Mars once had a thick CO2 atmosphere that somehow vanished, and these carbonates show where it went, absorbed into the ground by massive, long-lasting bodies of water. That part is being celebrated. But here's the thing that nobody is officially saying out loud. Stable lakes rich in carbonate minerals are one of the most favorable environments known for the origin of life. Mars had those conditions for a very long time. So the question the discovery quietly raises, but that NASA hasn't officially addressed, is simple. If the environment was that good for that long, what started there and where did it go? In August 1993, NASA's Mars Observer spacecraft was 3 days away from entering Mars orbit. 3 days from becoming the most powerful eye humanity had ever pointed at that planet when it went completely silent, never heard from again. The official explanation was a fuel line rupture, and I mean, that's possible. Spacecraft do fail, but here's what makes this one really stick. The Mars Observer was specifically designed to map the Sedona region in high resolution. The face, the pyramids, all of it. At the exact moment it was about to do that job, silence. And the raw mission data, whatever that spacecraft collected on its way in before the disappearance, NASA says it was lost with the probe. Now, could be total bad luck, could be a $1 billion spacecraft that failed at the worst possible moment, but the timing has just led to some questions, the ones that NASA has never really fully answered. In July 2024, Perseverance found a rock in the Jezero crater, nicknamed Chayava Falls, with small leopard-like rings of red and white inside it. Scientists flagged it immediately. On Earth, those mineral patterns appear in one specific context, the chemical boundary between oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor zones in rock, exactly the kind of edge environment where microbial life tends to cluster. NASA's official statement called it a potential biosignature and said further analysis was needed. That analysis came out in September 2025. The results were carefully worded. The patterns are consistent with ancient biology. They're also consistent with certain non-biological chemistry. NASA has not officially committed to either interpretation, and if there's even a grain of truth to the biology angle, well, What more can I say? Mars orbiters have photographed a series of near-perfect circular and rectangular dark pits on the Martian surface, some several hundred meters across. They're thought to be skylights, entrances to underground lava tube systems. On Earth, lava tubes run for miles. On Mars, with lower gravity, they'd be much larger. Some scientific estimates put individual Mars lava tubes at over a mile wide. NASA scientists have officially listed these as exploration priorities, partly because a sealed underground environment could shield microbial life from radiation. What nobody has officially confirmed is just how far that network goes. In 2000, images from the Mars Global Surveyor showed something strange running across the Martian surface in the North Polar region. Long, translucent-looking tube structures snaking for miles, casting shadows that indicate they're raised above the ground. NASA scientists who looked at them said they could be sand dunes in an unusual formation. But a group of researchers, including some with NASA affiliations, wrote papers arguing the geometry doesn't match known dune patterns and that the translucency in the images is consistent with a glass-like material. The theory, ancient lava tubes frozen over with a silica crust, still partially intact. Similar to the last point, on Mars, in a sealed glass tube, you'd have protection from radiation, possible retained moisture, possible retained atmosphere. NASA has never sent a probe specifically to investigate those structures. And those images? Well, they definitely don't come up often in official communications anymore. Phobos is Mars' largest moon, and in 2009, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed a large rectangular slab jutting out from its surface. A monolith, perfectly rectangular, casting a long, clean shadow. A scientist at the SETI Institute, Lan Fleming, published analysis suggesting the object was anomalous, that its geometry didn't match the surrounding terrain. Now, Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, was asked about it in a public interview, and his response was, "We should carefully examine the possibility that it's been placed there by an intelligent design." This is not a conspiracy blogger, that's an Apollo astronaut. NASA's official position is that it's a boulder ejected from an impact. What makes it interesting is the shape. Boulders don't generally have right angles. The full imaging of the surrounding area hasn't been released publicly, and nobody has officially gone back for a closer look. NASA publishes raw rover images publicly, and for years, amateur image analysts have been going through them frame by frame. Some of those images contain objects that appear in the raw feed and then disappear or are replaced in the processed versions. Blurred sections, patches of uniform gray over specific areas. Now, there are legitimate technical reasons this happens. Cosmic ray hits corrupt pixels, dust on the lens, software artifacts. NASA has explanations for all of it. But the thing people keep coming back to is the selectivity. Not every frame gets that treatment. Specific frames, one containing unusual shapes, objects that look structured, or what some researchers have called anomalous geometry. Those are the ones that get the patches. One analyst who cross-referenced raw and processed feeds across several thousand Curiosity images found that roughly 0.3% of frames showed signs of post-processing alterations beyond normal calibration. That is a small number, but it is not zero, and the frames involved are not random. This one is a little harder to verify, but it's also the one you can't ignore if you're being honest about what's out there. Over the past 2 decades, multiple individuals, some with claimed military and intelligence backgrounds, have come forward saying that a covert Mars program exists and has existed for decades. One of the most detailed accounts came from a man named Randy Kramer, who claimed to serve on Mars under a classified program called Project Moonshadow. He described underground bases, surface missions, and direct contact with 2 indigenous Martian species. Now, These claims are extraordinary, and extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, which these guys generally don't provide. But here's the part that is really hard to brush off completely. The technology those whistleblowers describe, advanced propulsion, underground habitats, classified space assets, is the same technology that the US Space Force's black budget programs have been estimated to be working on for decades. Whether you believe any specific person's story or not, the idea that absolutely nothing has happened on Mars beyond what NASA publicly announces requires you to trust that no government anywhere has run a classified space program. And I'd call that a slightly loftier goal. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!